Welcome to the Hohman Design podcast. I'm Tom Hohman, and today we've got some core contributors to everything we do here at Hohman Design, co-conspirators, if you will. Kevin Strait and Luke Smith have joined us today.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Glad to be here.
Absolutely. This is what we hope is going to be our core team here at the podcast of what I think are some brilliant minds, save for myself. And we'll see if that ends up being the case. Today, I thought we'd talk about tools.
Good subject.
Yes.
We have, this is pretty much what we do all the time anyway. And so now it was just time to maybe to get it down. So I got a couple thoughts for us. And one of the questions I wanted to throw out there to get us started is, what's the first interaction you had with a tool that kind of let you know that you were onto something, if you can remember that, or turn that into whatever you want it to be? But I'm thinking like that first time it felt like an extension of yourself, or you thought you felt empowered, or you had a romantic encounter with it. Mine's probably going to be in that universe.
Yeah.
That sounds a little weird, but I'll clarify. We'll fix that.
I do remember getting a Christmas present that was a kit of wooden blocks and some paints and some templates where you could build some very simple toys out of wooden primitives. And it came with a little package of nails and a tiny hammer that was appropriate for however old I was. And I just remember thinking that was mine now, and that hammer would last longer than the toys would, and it did. After the toys broke because they weren't well made, because I made them, then I still had that tool, and I think I even still have it. I had that. I did.
That's not going to be my answer, but I also remember getting some kind of set, and it had these wooden panels in it. Mm-hmm. They were all uniform. You got basically a couple stacks worth, and you could make a jewelry box, and you could make a this or that, and it was the same thing, little pin nails and a tiny hammer. But what I remember was trying to make like house of cards by stacking these panels. We'd take our Nerf guns and set up our Star Wars action figures, and we'd have these collapsing worlds out of these wooden panels. And I think I made one jewelry box that we gave my mom. I don't know how long she suffered it to be on her dresser before she was able to disappear it without our feelings being hurt. But that's what we did.
The one that comes to my mind is when I was, I think 3, my uncle gave me a tiny little rock hammer, the kind of hammer you would break open rock samples for looking for gems or whatever. And I was playing with it, and I don't remember exactly what happened, but I ended up breaking or cracking the bowl, not the bowl of the toilet, but the tank of the toilet in our bathroom. And probably just hitting things around the house with it. Who gives a 3-year-old a real hammer? But that's the kind of gift that I would like to give a kid, because it's real. It's not. I'm not demeaning you, child, and giving you a toy. This is the real tool.
This isn't a plastic hammer.
Yeah, it's not a plastic hammer.
The toilet breaker.
But the toilet tank had this crack in it that went around the corner my whole life, and it dripped about once an hour for 20 years. We never fixed it.
Oh,
and it rotted the floor out right there. And when we finally sold the house, we had to deal with it. Replace the floor and the toilet and everything. But from when I was 3 years old, the toilet had a crack in it because of a tool that my uncle gave me that was awesome. Way probably too grown up for a 3-year-old.
That's great.
Another one though that I would throw out there would probably the first real connection I had with a tool was way later in life. I think it was in some kind of a audio or production environment. Somebody had a T-handled Allen wrench for putting staging together. I remember watching the guy just going at the connections with that tool.
The coffin locks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That turn, a quarter turn. And I remember I ended up using it in that same context and feeling it's got a ball end so you could get it at a slight misalignment, get it in there quick. I remember thinking, wow, this is so well thought out for this task. It's exactly the right tool.
That's cool. My dad was an electrician in Chicago. He was in college, so he'd come home from the summers and work at his father's electrical company, Hohman and Hill. And I think they did some things. I think I remember some gritty projects they were involved in. They rewired a slaughterhouse. I spent a hot summer doing that. I think it's the Congress Hotel in Chicago. I wish I had Dad on tap to tell me if I'm getting that right, but they rechanneled all the plaster walls to lay new conduit and everything to rewire that whole hotel. But he only had a couple tools left. The only pro tools that were ever kind of in our house. I think he had an Ohio Forge, like lineman's pliers, and he had a pair of Klein diagonal cutters. And they had the burgundy shove-on handles that you heat up and shut
They're
up.
all nicked up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I would, those things fascinated me. Those dikes were the thing. So when I was at the workbench, I wanted them in my hands, and I'd chew on the ends of them. And so there was even more nicks.
Yeah.
And so eventually when I started my film career and was putting my first tool belt together, I found out that they were making the same pliers. I mean, the pliers are very little difference, but a little different. The handles are the same handles. And so I got them home, got them in the hot water, pushed them onto got rid of the plastic dip ones that come stock on the pliers, got rid of those, pushed on those hot handles, and I had to work, some teeth marks into them
just so they feel right.
Yeah, just so they felt right. But
my dad had a little pair of Exolite wire cutters that he prized. They were probably only $15, but they were a big deal to him. And he would get so mad at me. He had a few different periods. He would get so mad at me when I would cut things like coat hanger with those little. I remember him one time holding them up to me and saying, "Did you do that?" Looking through the hole in the middle.
No steel allowed.
No.
That's great.
Right. Copper only.
What is there a tool that you guys use with frequency that you've couldn't imagine improving upon, that you've never replaced, like because you just imagine this is as good as it gets?
I have tools that I love dearly, and I don't know that I've ever sat and thought, can I make a better one myself? I have plenty of tools that I hate, and I'm convinced I can make a better one.
We'll get to that.
But if I think of the tools that I love, maybe I love them because I don't know how they could be better. And that puts them into that category. Maybe it's part of being in that category.
Yeah.
Is this purely mechanical tools?
Anything.
If you go into computer science and software work, Notepad++ is high on my list of tools that I use. It's a real simple text editor, but it's context aware, and it knows how to highlight things based on what kind of file you're. So if you're looking at a PHP file versus a C file versus some other programming language, it'll say, okay, here's how an if statement is gonna be in one color, and then a while statement is gonna show you those things in color. So I would say Notepad++ in the computer world. Mechanically, I like Gear Wrench a lot, although I feel like they've gone downhill in the last few years. I've seen Gear Wrench tools that in the past they felt like they had a much higher resolution, and they were much more refined than they are when you buy one now.
That's going to be like my crescent wrenches with or
ratcheting
C wrenches with the one
wrench.
ratcheting box end.
Yeah, it's a box end and then a
okay,
ratchet, and it's like a 12-point ratchet, and it's self-contained one-way ratchet.
And it's a fine click.
Yeah, but I feel like the click fineness has gone down.
Yes.
And I don't know if that's just my old man perspective.
I think it's
things.
changed. I'm glad that I have a very old set that.
Okay.
I mean, not very old because they were I remember them showing up on the scene, right?
Yeah, and they were a lot more expensive too.
But it might be might be an engineering decision, because if you've got a ratchet mechanism in there and I want to put a lot of torque through something, I have to use larger detents. I have to use larger cams and
because they're much
escarpments.
Fine resolution means fine little notches.
So the amount of torque that I can put through the wrench, if it's the fine resolution ratchet, is small.
So it could be that, and some improvement in research at their end married an improved torque quality to an optimized gear set that changed the clicking sound that we equate with their
high quality.
What a phenomenon they were when they showed up.
Right, yeah. But now they just feel clunkier.
Since has actually become better, but it's creating a perceived loss for us. Perhaps it's all supposition, but What? Well, let me take a crack at that. I'd say like a number 11 X-Acto blade is probably something that I mean, now let me say this. I don't know that you can improve upon the aluminum stick. Like in terms of handles.
You put a light inside of it.
I've got the illuminated one.
Yeah.
I've got the silicone coated ones. I've got thick ones and thin ones, all these different contributions, and they all come apart. All the skin wears off, the silicone degrades and slips over the tip. I can't say that I've got an X-Acto knife that's better than the cheapest one. That one seems to keep delivering. I sometimes take a little piece of gaff tape, gaffer's tape, and I'll just put one loop around it, and that gives me a little something, and that's works as well as anything I've ever seen from corporate.
Right.
If you like the rubber skinned one or the one with the light on it, if you like any of those better and they don't seem to last, you just have to think of them as a wear part. So just the way the blade is a wear part.
Absolutely, yeah. In fact, I recently just took a silicone one. It's actually got a larger diameter handle that I think is an improvement, but the custom molded parts that I've now worn out, I've replaced with gaff tape, and I still think the diameter change is an improvement.
Yeah, better fit.
What tool makes the least sense to you in the world, or maybe just the most despised tool, something that you just regret every time you have to interact with it, or whatever you want to make it. I'll go first if
go ahead.
If that
it's time
helps.
to think about this one.
Yep.
To me, I'll go out on a limb here, and maybe it's just a conversation start, but I think a hammer and nail makes the
Really?
least sense. Now, of course, I want one after the electromagnetic pulse when we're all on the road, Cormac McCarthy's road together.
And there's no grid.
I want a hammer and some nails.
Right.
But until that happens, I have no use for a hammer and a nail.
Yeah.
That's just
in the world of turning screws with a battery powered handheld device.
Or shooting a nail out of a nail gun.
Oh yes.
Yeah, of course,
Oh,
that's right.
yes.
Yeah. So even if I had a project that was so repetitious that nails were potentially more fascinating than screws, I'd still want to automate that process. A hammer and a nail is a reason to hit your thumb, have the nail bounce back into your eye, to bend it over, and then to have to try to take it out with a pry bar.
Right.
And then all it's going to do is back halfway out eventually.
Over time.
And that's its entire life.
It's weird because if you gave me a hand saw, I'm less likely to hurt myself than if you gave me a powered circular saw. Yeah. But with a hammer and nails, I'm more likely to hurt myself than if you gave me a nail gun.
Absolutely. I have a screw bag, parachute bag of screws and a parachute bag of nails, and the nails in my nail bag might be the original ones I ever put in there at the beginning of my film career.
They're still there.
And my screw bag, of course, it's not even the original bag.
Right.
Yeah. One tool I think I hate is a dictionary. Every time I have to go to my panel of tools that I care about, which ranges everything from circular saws to the dictionary. If I'm reaching for the dictionary, I'm already angry, which doesn't help. And I'm never happy with what I find. I never really walk away from that thinking that tool helped me.
I find whenever I'm using a dictionary, what I really want is a dictionary that's also a thesaurus.
Or a person.
So the internet's greatly improved on that for me. Is that typically I can flow between definitions and synonyms and definitions of those synonyms.
Examples
and
of use. Yeah.
That gets a little more useful. But the paper dictionary, you're right, it's always lacking.
Yeah.
I'd say for me it's the crescent wrench. It's tempting to use, and I always regret having used one in a high stakes situation because it's never quite right. But as a kid, it was a major part of my life experience because I didn't have a lot of tools around, but I was always messing with mechanical things, and there was always a crescent wrench. And the old guy next door would always he would help me learn how to work on engines, and he kind of took me under his wing, and he used to call that a Carolina socket set the crescent wrench, and he would say,
You
"Put that thing down."
You guys were Virginians.
Yeah, so I live right here in Richmond, Virginia.
So yeah.
Right. And he had I don't know what his background was, but anyway, he had some prejudice against. And he would always say, "Put that thing down. There's no substitute for the right tool. Go find the right box wrench, the right ratchet, the right whatever, and stop being lazy and go get the right tool." So even I don't tend to have a lot of crescent. Now that I have resources and money that I can buy decent tools, I tend to shy away from crescent wrenches and adjustable things in favor of.
Of course, nothing beats the right tool.
Yeah,
for
it
the
tend to
job.
show up in plumbing though. I will bring a crescent wrench with me if I'm going under a sink.
Yeah, that's a caveat. If you're in a situation where you can't come and go easily, and you can't drag your whole collection with you,
I can't bring it
You're
all
going
with
up
me.
on a
I got
ladder.
flashlight in my
Lighting
mouth.
guys carry a crescent wrench, on a, what do you call when you grommet all your parachute cables together to make a hand, a grab, like a tail.
Yeah.
They do that, and they've got one on their belt, and that's because they're on top of a ladder, and they need basically three things.
You
and
can't
they're
afford to
quickly
carry it all
moving
with you.
between them.
And you don't need a torque spec.
Right.
So when you're under a car, you're really trying to fix something. Very few things you can just do to a good enough, and that truly is good enough. If you've got a torque spec, you should use it. So.
Yeah. I would say also cheap tools are the most annoying, frustrating, thwarting thing when I'm trying to do some mechanical task. Taking a cheap screwdriver and having it round off the little teeth on a Phillips, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or
Just
having
to see a flathead screwdriver develop a
Yes.
twist in it.
Yes.
So
Oh, yes.
as you're trying to place it, you suddenly see the majority of the screwdriver is telling you one thing, and then you have to adjust for how much
Yes.
it's already
Yeah.
moved off spec.
Yeah, cheap tools or a Torx bit where the little teeth
Oh,
are
yeah.
starting to twist.
Oh,
Bam.
yes.
Yeah.
So I don't buy tools when we get near Christmas. I won't buy any, especially power tools, because I'm suspicious that.
Conspiracy.
Here it
Yeah,
comes.
I know. Here it comes. I'm suspicious that. So that's a time of year when people are buying tools where the person buying it is not the tool user. It's a gift. It's going to get wrapped and go under a tree, which means we've got an opportunity to sell a tool that doesn't meet our QC standards, doesn't fall.
They've been
right within.
saving them up all year in
Been
the
saving
special
them
room,
So there's
and
maybe
now
two
they're
bins
moving them
for
out to
QC
the marketplace.
rejects. There's a bin of rework, and then there's a bin of, well, we'll just sell it at Christmas. And if we're going to sell a $200 tool set for $100, there has to be an answer somewhere.
Right.
The answer
The
isn't
Something's gotta
just
give.
because it's
The
December
answer
10th.
might be volume. The answer could be in the business strategy somewhere. I want to back up to crescent wrenches for a minute. There's actually a wonderful. What I do use a crescent wrench for is to hold the nut when I'm operating the screw or the bolt on the other side. So I don't mind when I have like a Phillips tip flathead or panhead screw, and I'm holding the nut on the other side. I'll do that. If it's especially if it's like a nylock nut, and so I'm holding that with my crescent wrench while I work the other side. I'm just really holding it still. But so I carry one crescent wrench in my tool belt, and the one that I have now on the other side has that ratcheting box wrench, but with
Like a gear wrench.
interchangeable sockets, and
Yes.
they're pass-through sockets.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't have actually a pass-through socket set other than the one that came with my crescent wrench. And so now I can, when you're installing stuff up in a grid, you're hanging HVAC stuff, or I think I installed a media tray hanging from the studio here, and you've got threaded rod, and you got to choke way up on some threaded rod. You can pass it through that socket set.
Yeah, you can get
I
all
love
12
that.
points of contact all the way down.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are really nice. I've got a few of those. I remember a moment where I thought that this whole idea of tools was expanded. At work, we had gotten a new electron microscope, and they had the people come in to train us, and they just kept referring to this wonderful, complicated thing that was the cutting edge of science. He just kept referring to it as the tool. And remember, when you're cleaning the tool to do this, or when it's time to shut the tool off, here's the procedure. And they referred to it as a singular noun, the tool. And that was it wasn't, some pivotal point in my life, but it was interesting to see somebody take something so advanced and talk about it like it was a screwdriver.
Yeah.
Have you guys got an improvised tool that you kind of keep using or through the years, that or a trick like putting a pipe onto your pipe wrench to extend it and get the torque? But is there some other thing that you use frequently? I can go first to set the tone, which I have the end of a broomstick that I cut off. I cut off about 10 inches of a broomstick, and now it's got a flat end, and it's got the original factory rounded edge, and I use that to transfer the blow from a metal hammer into something that I don't want to mar, and I actually sometimes use it to form material. I can use the flat side to punch something down along a sharp edge, and kind of almost like you're doing sheet metal forming. But it's hard for me to even remember examples, except that I've got like 2 or 3 of them now that I've made over time, different diameters, different thickness, and I'll hit them from either end to accomplish that miscellaneous task that seems to come up. And I'm not sure I could tell you what it is though. I use it as a burnishing tool. So that round end, I might use it to push something down or get the air bubbles out of something.
I have a lot of things like that in the software world, where little snippets of code that go from project to project. I'll have a standardized way of processing a file into memory or parsing some chunk of text, and I'll go back to I keep a little kind of a library of things that are useful, and I'll pull them out. I don't have any good, off the top of my head, mechanical equivalents of that.
I have that in the software world in AutoCAD or in SolidWorks, where if you're working with solid design, you're trying to arrive at a 3D object that is something you want to manufacture or pass along. Sometimes it's easier to start with primitive solids and then subtract from them. And sometimes the software doesn't quite let you do what you want easily. You'll end up drawing a tool that is a subtraction. You'll end up drawing something almost like it's a die, or almost like it was
like a router,
magic
router bit.
Almost, yeah, like this imaginary tool bit, and then you'll use it to subtract away from your solid to get to what you want. And it can be fewer mouse clicks than doing
I could see you
built-in way.
ending up with a library.
And then you end up with a library. And it kind of helps you know how we're going to make it, because I needed all these shapes to subtract away from the block to get me where I want to be. But I also think about making actually Luke was in on this one, making a tool to try to figure out how much electric current was flowing through something without having the right meter to measure it directly. So we'll tell this story together.
All right, remind me of which project this was.
So I know
I don't remember what the context was.
This was the milliohm bridge. There was a thousandth of an ohm copper bar. And
was that the jump starting the car thing?
Exactly. So you could tell how many amps of current was needed to crank over a car, to start a car. It's many hundreds of amps, so you'd need quite a special meter to measure it directly.
So my company decided to get in temporarily into the business of importing some of those little jump start boxes. They got exotic batteries in them, and a set of clamp-on car battery jumper cables that comes 6 inches out of the end of this thing. And the Chinese manufacturer was saying, it'll do 400 amps, and it's perfect and great. And we were like, yeah, trust but verify. So I got one of their samples, and I'm thinking, okay, how on earth do I measure 400 amps for a few milliseconds? And so we started looking around at, all right, I guess you could precision resistor, but it needs to be crazy small resistance in between their device and the car you're jumping. And I ended up buying I think it was 1 milliohm?
It was 1 milliohm.
Yeah, Kevin and I ended up pooling brain power on this one. I'm not sure why that ended up that way, but so we took their little jumper cable attachment that plugs in, cutting into the middle of it, and running the red lead through this industrial grade precision 1 milliohm resistor, and then you put a oscilloscope across it, right? That's real sensitive and battery powered, so you're not part of the other electrical system. It's a floating measurement device, So that would be a custom-made tool.
Yeah.
And what we discovered was it, in fact, would deliver 400 amps. And it worked. It was pretty cool to actually see it on a scope trace. It was on one of my old Cherokees. Kevin cranked while I watched the scope, and I actually got a photograph of it, of the voltage across the resistor jumping up to what indicated 400 approximately amps. And then as you cranked through the cycle and the motor caught, you see the current trace dropping down towards
and in
towards-
like a
As the
stepping
engine speed.
pattern that matches
as the thing's
the
turning through
crank.
the cycle. Yeah. So that's
Fascinating.
one of those examples of an improvised tool that worked out well.
Yeah. But we had to make it. So
That's
I
awesome.
ordered a precision resistor on eBay that was probably new old stock, 50 years old or some military application.
yeah.
That's awesome. We've done a lot of. I wish I could now recall some of the custom tools we've done here. We are not going back to them frequently, but last April we built a device for measuring the diffusion of acrylic samples.
Oh, yeah.
So I had bought a library of acrylic samples from I think Acrylite. And so we had a whole box of acrylic samples, and we wanted to see. We had LED strips we were going to be putting behind it, and the source, is something that you could see through the acrylic. So
Little spots of
call
light.
it the sourciness.
Yeah, little spots of light.
You'd see all the little individual LEDs, and so we had a couple questions of like how far behind the acrylic the LEDs need to be, and at what brightness. And so we had built a little stair step, and we ran a strip across each stair step, and we created a little slot in which you insert your sample, and you could put your sample in and then dial up the LEDs, and we could determine that this LED at a certain brightness, at a certain distance, created the perfect level of diffusion, or actually the minimum standard of diffusion, so that the diffuse quality would just give you a panel of light with no perceivable source.
Yeah.
And that was a great little box that you built for us
I
there.
remember that.
That was cool. What is the smallest collection of tools that you take when your friend calls and says, "Oh, can you come over and help?" And you don't know exactly what you're getting into, but and you want to take one handful. What's your go-to grab bag of like the smallest collection of tools?
Well, the first thing is an excuse not to go. So.
I tend to have a S.A.E. and metric common size box wrenches on carabiners, 2 different carabiners. So I grab both of those. Deep well sockets. I think I've got both flavors on same kind of deal. One of those Cobalt Lowe's brand screwdrivers that flips around the 6 different ways.
Yeah, sure.
I love those things. Crescent wrench, unfortunately. Vice grips, for sure, and channel locks.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably and a meter, a volt-ohm meter.
Interesting.
Always.
Okay. And my equivalent of that,
Flashlight.
A flashlight,
You get
right?
a specific
And a
measuring
Right, Sharpie would be good.
a
good.
measuring tool, I think, will probably be in each one of ours. But
Yes.
what do you typically measure? For you,
It's always electrical.
For me, it's a steel ruler,
Uh-huh.
so that the steel rule can be in a photograph.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's something that I end up doing more than I
to,
should.
to prove to somebody that
To
their
prove
thing
to
is wrong.
somebody that this thing is how big it is, or
Uh-huh.
something, or broke, and here's some proof of when it happened.
Right.
Yeah. The other thing that I'll do is I'll organize my tools by task. So I'll have plastic totes. I've given up on cardboard. I don't put anything in a cardboard box other than the day I bought it. So in plastic totes, I'll organize things by themes of what am I
Task.
going to
When
go
your
do?
friend says, "Come help us hang the widescreen
You
TV,"
go grab that
There's a
box.
bucket
you've
for
got a
that.
tote for that. And
Yeah,
when they
there's a-
say, "My car won't start," you've got a tote for that.
Exactly. And if they say, I need some help Saturday with a plumbing task, you ask them, are we going to be under a sink? Are we going to be at the swimming pool? Are we putting a new water hose on your car? And for some reason you called it plumbing. And you get those little clues. and then you show up with the right bucket and everything. So I end up with duplicates of a lot of tools.
That's a whole topic unto itself. Of
Duplication
tool
of tools.
duplication.
So it's fine if I have 6 hacksaws because one of them's in the, they're in the various buckets and they need to be. And they're cheap enough.
Let's unweave that in 1 second. I'll go ahead and toss my answer into the hat, though, which is I think it's channel locks and my dikes.
Yeah.
I always bring a stud finder. I don't know why so much of what I do seems to end up being somebody wants to put in a shelf or a ceiling fan or a drop down storage platforms from your garage, from the garage rafters, and I'm always like going, this thing, we're gonna start with where everything is, and so I have it's not. I think today they've got some really, really cool ones, but I've got this old faithful. It was at the time I think it was one of the fanciest digital ones that kind of tells you as you're getting close. Then it indicates where the stud begins. It gives you a different laser projection onto the wall when you're on the center, and you can depress this mechanism, and it actually scratches a little pencil mark into. So you almost you have a replaceable lead tip like you'd have for certain types of compasses.
Yeah.
And it's built into the device. So you press it into the wall to engage it. You start moving it. It says, "Oh, here's the edge of the stud, and now we're another 3/4 of an inch over." Beep! It beeps and shoots a laser, and you just tap your finger and it marks the wall.
That's great.
And I love this thing, and it gets me all squared away, ready to begin most of these tasks I end up being.
Yeah. I was just reminded to go back to one of your original questions about the tool that defined your early tool experience. My father worked at home as an electronics designer, and he was always in his office with a set of calipers measuring some electronic component and going to the screen and laying out printed circuit board design. And he would sit there with his calipers and he would say, okay, that's 20 thousandths, whatever. When I was about 12 or 13, he gave me a set of my own dial calipers. I still have them to this day. They're sitting on my desk at home. And that was one of those moments where I felt like a real boy. I'm like, wow, I've got my set of calipers now.
Yeah.
And I'm not using his. Or
Geppetto's gifted you
right.
with, what did you remember what they were? Were they?
Nothing exciting. There was some, Chinese brand, whatever, but it was they were about maybe 12 inches long. And it was the mechanical thousandths, 100 thousandths per round of the dial.
Have you seen the ones that do metric and standard simultaneously?
In the same mechanical
two
dial? Oh, that's cool, yeah.
Chasing each other. It's just delightful to watch or whatever.
The ones I have now are Mit something.
It's Mitsutoyo.
Okay, yeah, Japanese, and they're digital.
I finally
it's just
have
so easy to just read the
now.
number instead of trying to think about where the clock hands are.
Yeah.
But I still have those mechanical ones sitting on my desk right beside the digital ones.
Very cool. Yeah, that's so I was curious to know, like, when you said I'll bring my meter, I bring my stud finder, you might bring your calipers. Like, I bet I had a feeling even the smallest group of tools will definitely include a measuring device,
some kind of measuring device.
Every job. To round it out, I think I take always carry a snap blade, razor knife.
Those are great.
Because I'm either cutting with it, but I'm also extending it. I use it mostly with all 6 inches out or whatever.
As a dagger.
Something very dangerous, I'm trying to.
It's bending as you're going.
Yeah.
Now, do you cut them off with a tool and do it away from you, or are you very?
I just click it one click out, and typically on the floor, snap it off.
That makes me so nervous to snap a blade like that.
Oh, it does. Every time I feel it coming, it's just.
There was today actually at work. I was out in our warehouse, and one of the guys was cutting down a big 2-layer corrugated box for like a Gaylord kind of size thing, and he had the blade all the way out 6 inches, and I was watching it, and the sound it was making cutting through that cardboard just made my whole everything was just wrong. It made that sound that blade makes in cardboard makes me want to curl up in the fetal position and cry.
When I see it
noise.
Under heavy force, just waving back and forth like the tail of an orca or something. I'm like just waiting for it to
snap off,
go
into your eye.
Like that's the ER moment. That's when you. How many stitches is that gonna be?
Right in your wrist.
Yeah. You run into the other rooms
Right.
quietly, white-knuckled.
You don't even want to look at it.
Yeah,
Yes,
this has
I've
never
been
happened.
there. Yes,
Oh.
those things make me nervous.
Well, when I think about snap-off blades or when I think about X-Actos, I think about cutting foam core board or cutting cardboard. It's amazing how, here's something that I could tear apart with my hands if I wanted to. But if I draw on it with a pencil and then I want to cut it with an X-Acto, I get about 10 inches and the blade's shot. And I need another one. And what is it about foam core that is so hard on a razor blade?
Yeah, well, you know what I wonder if it is you're the one who told me I wanted to know how do these, well, the first ones I saw were Mr. Clean brand, these sheetrock sponges,
The magic
It's a
eraser.
magic
the magic erasers.
Oh,
It's
melamine.
melamine
Yeah,
foam.
yeah.
and
Abrasive.
And Kevin said, well, the thing is they've taken the surface area of Texas and condensed it into a thing. Now, if you can imagine a stain and you rubbed it across all of Texas, it would be gone. And he goes, that's what happens every time you rub the thing.
Every time you move it 6 inches.
The cellular structure of the interior of the foam core is probably very similar.
Yeah.
And of course, it's like doing 1,000 cuts per inch instead of 1 cut per inch. So no wonder your blade's shot after the first few strokes.
It's always shocking though, because I might go a year between foam core projects.
Yeah.
And then I sit down and think, oh, I'll draw this thing and then I'm
Yeah.
going to cut it out. And
I'll
you
cut-
got to get a box of blades.
I'll cut boxes with the same blade forever, and
Right.
and then I get into some foam core, and 3 strokes later, the foam core's all balling up, and
Yeah.
my edges are ruined, and
Yeah.
hopefully that's where there's gonna be some joinery. What are some of the improvements? Probably I'm thinking more in power tools. Hand tools change a little bit. In fact, I want to back up. We were talking about that reversible screwdriver, and you talked about the special tools you take when that plumbing project ends up being on a radiator. When you take out the your tips from that reversible screwdriver, the octagonal receptacle it matches what you'll find on your hose clamps.
Yes.
Yes.
A certain
Yeah.
size
Yes,
hose clamps.
that is a nice feature.
And I'm trying to think
And
of
there's-
what
there's
else.
two
There's
different
another
sizes.
super common.
There's 2 different sizes in those Lowe's brand.
Yeah.
The Cobalt reversible.
Okay.
There's one's like 30 seconds.
16ths or something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the other one's a
one-
little
Oh,
bigger.
oh, sure, of
Yeah.
course.
So you
of
get two
course.
different
So you
sizes.
get 2
Yeah,
different
yeah,
sizes.
Yeah.
But the hose clamp is the real common one that's in life. That fits the bigger of those 2, I believe.
Well, 13 mil,
Oh,
half inch and 13
I know what
mil.
I'm thinking is on my Kleins, you don't have a circular shaft with a octagonal or a hexagonal receptacle. You actually have this hexagonal extrusion, and so you can not only use the inside for your
Yep.
hose clamp, but the outside is a 3/8 inch like a hex tool.
Yeah, it's an
And-
Allen
An
wrench.
Allen wrench.
I
Yeah.
can those coffin locks from stage work that you were talking about. It's the exact size for that.
Yeah.
So my Klein screwdriver has got the 8 plus the hose clamp receptacle plus the other one, which I don't know what it fits, plus the outside edge on my Kleins anyway works as that coffin lock tool.
And they work as a hammer if you turn them sideways and beat with them. We have a friend,
man.
Mike. Mike calls that
Electrician's hammer.
electrician's hammer. That's
Yeah,
right. That's
he
what
says
he
an
calls
electrician's hammer
That's
is
what he
whatever
means,
tool
right?
electricians
Turn it
call it.
sideways and beat with it.
Yeah. Well, my Kleins have a rubberized handle, so they were
Right.
just bouncing off everything
Right.
I wish I could transfer energy
Right.
into. But I ruined my first pair of those by impatiently wanting to chisel something with my flathead screwdriver, and by whacking on the back of that thing, I just
Right at the
rammed everything
Yeah.
up
right
in the
at the
thing
hinge. Yeah.
and blew out my.
It all crushes
that
together
octagonal-
into there. Yeah.
The little ball joint that's in there. What would you call it? There's a little steel ball that.
There's a
clicks to
detent,
set it.
a little
Yeah.
click, right?
Yeah, that was all ruined as soon as I went
It's
to go
hard to
use
find
it
a
as a chisel.
screwdriver that'll put up with a lot of hammer use. You start using your screwdrivers like chisels, and they're not good for anything anymore.
Yeah.
So I was asking about improvements in tools that make you want to replace your old faithful tools, and I'll lead off by suggesting blade replacements on power tools these days are all so cool. And I bought at the beginning of my film career, I bought I'd say some of the best tools you could get in each category. Of course, for a tiger saw, I had a Porter cable tiger saw, a reciprocating saw. I had the worm drive. I think that was also a Porter cable circular saw. Bosch was making the best jigsaw at the time, and there are a few others pretty specifically targeted to the brand who had made their name by making this tool. But all of them now, and I think especially of the Bosch jigsaw, my cordless Bosch jigsaw has this awesome blade release. It ejects the blade, and you just click a new one in, as simple as pie. All the old tools, my old tiger saw, everything else requires a tool to put blades in and out of it. It's like I can hardly stand owning any of my tools now that take
require another
chuck tool.
Right.
That need a chuck or an Allen wrench.
Everything has got automatic release.
The one that's obnoxious to me is that it seems like every drill press uses a different size chuck key that I don't have. And I have one of those universal ones that's got 3 common sizes, and somehow it doesn't have the one I want. Every time I use a drill press in my life, I experience not having the right key for it somehow.
Yeah.
I was watching Laura Kampf on Adam Savage's Tested channel. They were making, I think it was the video where they make the bottle top release hammer. They make this great kind of Rube Goldberg-esque hammer popping device to remove the bottle cap off your bottle. And she went over to Adam's drill press, and he had a hand tightening, a keyless chuck on his drill press.
Yes.
Mind blown. I was like, next time I'm at the hardware store, of course, yeah. Like, I don't do any serious work on my drill press where I have to worry about whether this is adequate or whatever. Like, duh.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'll be doing that.
Chainsaws. Every time I'm using a chainsaw,
You're angry.
I don't have the tool that lets me
Right.
open the hatch and get to the blade or move the bar,
Yes.
get anything right.
And it's dire consequences of
If I've got a chainsaw,
things are bad. The
something
power's been
happened.
out for a week. There's a tree across the road. People are shooting at you.
Yes.
Everything is wrong.
Cold,
and the
it's
thing
raining.
won't start.
Right.
I hate chainsaws.
Did I give you my chainsaw? Who did I give my? No, I gave Steve my chainsaw.
Think of it, I
This
don't know
last
what it is
year,
anymore.
I stored what should have been an amazing Husqvarna. Is that how you pronounce that? Chainsaw, and I stored it and moved it many times. And I finally said, "What am I doing?
Just let it go.
I don't think I could do it." The carburetor was varnished, of course.
all gummed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be tempted these days to do some of those gas-powered tools again. Now that they sell those convenient fuel oil mixtures with no ethanol
Yes.
in them, and you can imagine that you could own one of these things
Yes.
and it not be ruined every season. But pretty much back in the day when you're taking your own 10% ethanol gas from the gas station, mixing it with oil yourself, you're doing it wrong, plus you're gumming up your carburetor from normal use. And every time you store it, it's toast.
You ruin it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that canned fuel. What I like even more is I want a chainsaw that takes propane bottles. Either
man, that
green
would be
Coleman
beautiful.
bottles that screw on, or the blue benzomatic bottles you'd use for brazing or soldering. Why can't I thread on a dry gas fuel, and then somewhere there's an oil sump to lubricate the mechanism?
That's the issue. There's no oil sump in a chainsaw.
Right. Well, make one. I've got a bar oil sump anyway.
That's true.
We're already there.
Yeah, it's true. Use
There's
the
no
same oil.
excuse for this.
Yeah.
Oh, is it heat though? Right? Is that why you would need an oil pump? I mean,
You got to lubricate the machinery as that crank and piston and all that stuff turns. You got to lubricate it.
I know the gases you were using were exaggerated examples, but they would run so hot, right? I mean,
about the same.
above.
Yeah,
About the same.
it wouldn't matter.
Really?
You can
Okay.
control that too by adjusting fuel air mixtures and some other things.
Okay, so even like the yellow.
Well, probably not acetylene.
the-
You
The
would want to use
acetylene would be a
natural. Yeah.
But just the long chain.
We don't want to do metallurgy.
propane type. Yeah.
Just
that
the green
burns slow
Coleman
enough.
screw-on bottles, or the blue, benzomatic kind of screw-on bottles for soldering. A dry fuel.
Yeah. Yeah, you need oil. That's the issue. You couldn't get enough oil into the airstream down the carburetor.
So that logic works fine as an argument against the weed eater or an argument against the leaf blower or anything else, but in a chainsaw, I already have a separate oil sump. we're there.
Yeah.
Hashtag Hohman Design.
Yeah. The Hohman Design chainsaw.
Let's call the patent attorney.
I know. Oh, wait.
Awesome. What did you want to say earlier about tool duplication?
Oh, and knolling. So,
yeah.
Tom, you taught me this. Or was it? I guess it was you that taught me this concept of knolling, of organizing your tools and your materials in your shop, in your workspace, in such a way that all the trash is gone to start with, all the unneeded tools are gone.
Now you've really practiced this, because that's not what has been evident.
It doesn't show in my
when
life.
I get to participate in some of your workspaces.
It's aspirational.
Yeah. Okay.
So, A, all the trash is gone.
Yeah.
B, all the tools that are not part of the task are gone. And that is, and back to the point of what knolling is, just real quickly, is organizing your tools in a left, right, top, down kind of sequence that visually makes sense and you can find things quickly, and they're all square to your work surface. So you have a fast visual cue. If something's not square to the edge of the table and lined up with its neighbors, it's a quick visual cue that, I didn't put that back where it goes. Let me take the time now, stop, put it back in its place.
Just like a great pegboard,
Yeah.
layout in a garage where you have all the
shadows.
negative space,
Right.
or a individually cut out Formula One, tool
Yes,
chest.
right.
Box.
So everything's in its place, and duplicate tools have no place in that universe because they're a distraction. If you've got 3 copies of the same screwdriver, or worse, 3 similar things that do the same task, you've got a hacksaw, a better hacksaw, a dull hacksaw, one that's not quite exactly put together right. That is going to slow you down from choosing the right tool for that task. There is one hacksaw that should be on your surface of work, and any other more hacksaws are just clutter. So one of the things that I struggle with a lot is when I'm doing the grab bag for some task is duplicating things that have snuck in. So I'll grab my little go box, and I'll look in there and I'll see 3 or 4 copies of the same type of tool, and I'll pull them out and set them aside. But then they're sitting there when I come home, and they weren't knolled.
They go right back in the bag.
They go right back in the bag, right? Exactly.
Right back in the bag.
You were talking earlier. You brought up Mike, and I'm trying to think of a couple. He has got a couple great tool sayings. There's something he refers to, I think, as like a bolt rounder. Or
Yeah.
Bolt rounder, a crescent wrench.
Yeah.
He calls a ladder a tall tool.
And a hammer a heavy tool.
Yes.
So all it has to do is be heavy.
That's right. Mike does a lot of telecom work, and he always carries those little Klein brand scissors, lineman scissors with him. And if you're ever around Mike and you need to cut something, before you ever realize you need to cut it, he's holding out a pair of those scissors in your field of vision. Or if you say, "Do you have a pair of scissors, Mike?" He'll say, "I got dressed, didn't I?" And he pulls them out of his pouch that he wears on and hands them to you. Usually he's got several pairs of these scissors on him.
He'll probably buy 10 a year.
Yeah, and he gives them away, party favors. But it's one of those features of him as a person that has been consistent the whole time I've known him. I've known him for 20-some years, and he's always been that way with those scissors.
He'd get dressed for a wedding and put on a tux, and then put on the scissor pouch and think nothing of it.
Right, and they're good. They're used for cutting telephone wires and things like that. He's taught me... one of the things he's taught me over my life with tools is he looks at everything around him as a tool. Kind of like you were saying with the electron microscope, is this huge complicated thing is a tool. And Mike has that worldview of the van, the truck, is a tool. It's a black box. It's the tool that takes us places. Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot is the tool that gives us things we need to do our work.
It's a dispenser.
Yeah, it's a real black box kind of modular thing.
Yeah.
the government is a tool that keeps the infrastructure working, that kind of thing.
The second half of that sentence could have gone a lot of places.
Right, but he looks at it very, very pragmatically of all of these things around us in our daily life are tools. The bed is a tool that helps us sleep.
Sleep tool. Time to get the sleep tool.
Right.
That reminds me of, I've been watching a lot of YouTube. There's a former Navy sonarman who goes by the handle Jive Turkey online, and he reminds us that they call the part of the people tank is a portion of the submarine. We want to keep water out of the people tank. But seeing everything as a tool, I think that's as good a place as any for us to round out this episode. Thanks for joining us this time, and let's do it again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's great.